Now I have to read from the Night Fairy, so we do double. I'm reading 2 books. I'm reading a lot of books. I'm actually reading books, grown-up books too, at the same time. So you can like read 3 or 4 books at the same time. You just have to trade between. So the Night Fairy, and we're on chapter 8, The Spider. It had the battle with the praying mantis, which is dangerous enough. I don't know if the praying mantis will come back for more, or if it's just bad enough to have to deal with the spider. Okay, the spider. Never had the garden seemed so large. Florrie's legs were scratched and aching, and the rough brick of the patio scraped the soles of her feet. She runs with bare feet. She doesn't have shoes. She doesn't need them. Nevertheless, she set a good pace, sprinting and leaping over the cracks between the bricks. Just imagine how long it takes to run across a brick patio if you're this big. And so she's like that big. I would imagine that the gap in the bricks, you would have to go outside and find a brick, how they're put together, and it's at least like this, like a ½ inch, which means that that leap is a pretty big leap. It would have to be like, if you were that size of a fairy, it would be like you jumping across a sidewalk, I imagine, from like the yard side to the street. So it would be that. It was growing dark. A pale star winked in the sky, and the colors of the garden were fading. The white roses glowed in the dimness like the star overhead. By the time Florrie reached the juniper bush, she had a stitch in her side. So it's like she can't run with a full gait because her muscle is like cramping up right there probably from running so much and being hungry. But her footsteps never slowed. That means she is not going to give up. She must cut the web and free the hummingbird before the bats came out to hunt. So she's not even thinking about the spider. She's thinking about the bats. She had forgotten about the spider. While Florrie had been warming the eggs, the spider had returned and found the hummingbird trapped in its web. Now the spider was wrapping its prey, creeping around and around the open wings, wet silk dripping from its spinnerets. Florrie stood stock still, gazing upward. The spider was a large creature, a female, no doubt, as male spiders are puny. Her black and yellow body was as long as Florrie was tall. What? That is so big. She was beautiful. Oh, it says her. I'm sorry. Let me back up one sentence. Her black and yellow body was as long as Florrie was tall and a good deal fatter. So she's like, let me just measure this. Her black and yellow body was as long as Florrie was tall. So that means Florrie and this spider match, like body-wise. The legs are going to go longer, the spider's legs, and then Florrie's like this, but good deal, which means that spider's bigger all around than Florrie. She was beautiful in a scary black and yellow sort of way, but she was deadly. Florrie thought of the spider's fangs digging into her and shivered. Nevertheless, she spat on her hands and caught hold of the bottom strand of the spider web. The spider's head jerked up. Although she had 8 eyes, her eyesight was poor. She couldn't see Florrie, but she felt the web move under the fairy's weight. The spider swung downward, hanging from a thread. She grumbled something that sounded like feast or famine. Always the way. So that means that you either have a lot to eat or a little bit to eat. So she is saying that is a lot to eat with just the hummingbird, and now she can eat a fairy. The spider swung downward, hanging from a thread. She grumbled something that sounded like feast or famine, and always the way. The hairy forelegs twitched, testing the air. Why, it's a fairy, cried the spider. What's a fairy doing in my web? Are you stuck? She did not sound unfriendly. It took Florrie a moment to gather her thoughts. I'm not stuck, she answered. She took care to speak more politely than usual. She had an idea that spiders must be treated with respect. I came to free the hummingbird. Don't you think she's sorry, hold on. Don't you think that she's a bit big for you to eat? I can eat her, said the spider. I've never caught anything I couldn't eat. For that matter, I could eat you. And she gave a low chuckle. Mind you, I don't want to. They say it's bad luck to kill a fairy, and I don't fancy bad luck. But I could eat you, missy, if I wanted to. Florrie didn't doubt it. Seeing the spider up close, she was tempted to leap down from the web and shriek for Scuggle. She cast a nervous glance at the hummingbird. The bird hung limp, eyes closed. You've poisoned her, Florrie said accusingly. Not yet, answered the spider. I like to wrap 'em before I bite 'em. That way you don't waste so much juice. Florrie's thoughts raced. If the hummingbird hadn't been bitten yet, there was still hope. If you haven't bitten her, why isn't she moving? She's gone into a torpor, and I want to read. Let me just spell that word for you because I always wonder about it. It's not a word that we use that often, or I use that often, I should say. Torpor. It's like the stillness, as if you're dead, and it's Torpor. Torpor. It's a good word. It's a delicious word. Okay. The spider explained, hummingbirds do that. When they run out of strength, they slow their bodies down. That's why she looks dead. But she's not. A good thing, too. I don't like dead meat. I like it hot and juicy. So she nodded toward a grayish bundle on the other side of the web. Take that wasp. He's still alive and kicking. What I say is, a dead wasp is nasty, but Florrie forgot about being polite. Why not eat the wasp? She interrupted. You don't need a whole big bird to eat. Why don't you eat the wasp and let the hummingbird go? The spider looked affronted. Who do you think you are? Telling me what to eat. I'll eat what I choose. Missy, it's no business of yours. It is my business, Florrie said rashly. The hummingbird is my friend. If you try to bite her, I'll sting you, and I'll stick you with my dagger. And she drew her knife and brandished it fiercely. Let her go. The spider's eyes gleamed faintly red. That's all 8 of them. All at once, she swung downward, heading for Florrie. The black and yellow legs swung into action, moving with incredible speed. Florrie panicked. She shouted for her stinging spell so fast that she mixed up the magic words. The spider danced closer. Florrie closed her eyes. She thought of the spell she used when making cobweb ropes. She imagined a vine spiraling toward the sun, twisting. The words spilled from her lips. When she opened her eyes, these are terrible. I remember this part of the story, and it's not a great one, so hold on. When she opened her eyes, she saw that the spell had worked. The threads of the cobweb had coiled tightly, snagging the spider in her own web. Ropes of silk fettered the black and yellow body. Sticky threads gummed the spider's mouth shut. 3 of the 8 legs were folded under themselves. The other 5 stuck out at queer angles, twitching helplessly. Florrie gave a little gasp. She wasn't sorry that her spell had worked, but it was clear that the spider was in great pain. It was also clear that Florrie had made an enemy. The spider's eyes bulged with rage. This isn't just like I'm angry at you. This is like I'm hurt and I'm angry. That's a big anger because her body is hurt. I don't know if she can be fixed. I didn't mean it, Florrie said hastily. Florrie is learning so much. She's learning how to feel bad too about what she's done. I meant it, but her voice trailed off as she eyed the spider's left foreleg. It was so bent and crooked that it made Florrie feel a little sick. Here, hold still. That leg's going to snap into if I don't hold still, I say. I'm going to cut the ties. Florrie. She's learned so much in this chapter. She clenched the knife and darted forward, nicking the thread that held the spider's leg, and the leg shuddered back into place. There, Florrie said nervously. Is that better? The spider glared at her. Florrie hesitated. Then she switched her knife to her other hand so that she could wipe her sweaty palm on her skirt. Her heart beat fast as she cut the threads that bound the other 7 legs. When she finished, the spider was still her prisoner, but the 8 legs hung straight and free, like the petals of a black daisy. Now, Florrie said briskly, don't you feel better? The spider flexed her legs, making sure they still worked. Her eyes were still furious, but it was clear that she was no longer in agony. So she's mad now for just being trapped, but she's not hurt and mad and trapped. She's just trapped. I have an idea, Florrie announced. I'd like to cut the threads around your mouth so that we can talk things over. Only you mustn't bite me. Promise me you won't bite me. There was no answer. Florrie took a deep breath. Then she wedged the blade of her knife under the threads around the spider's jaw. She tried to keep her hands as far from the great fangs as she could, but she couldn't cut the cords without getting close. The spider's fangs were sharply pointed and curved inward, like the horns of a bull. Florrie knew that the poison inside those fangs was powerful enough to turn her bones and muscles to soup. Her stomach felt queasy with terror, but her hand did not shake. She sawed carefully until she cut the thread from the spider's jaw. The spider opened her mouth and said a long string of bad words. Florrie couldn't blame her. She waited until the spider had run out of things to say. Then she said, "Here's my idea." She pointed to the web, which was dotted with little gray bundles. You have other good things to eat in your web. If you promise not to eat the hummingbird, I'll set you free. Why shouldn't I eat the hummingbird? Demanded the spider. Isn't she my prey? Didn't I work to weave the web that caught her? Don't I have to eat? I feel like all the answers to those questions are yes. Let me see. Well, why shouldn't I eat a hummingbird? You can't answer that with yes. So, isn't she my prey? Yes, she's her prey. Didn't I work to weave the web that caught her? Yes, the spider did that. Don't I have to eat? Yes, that spider has to eat. Florrie's hand dropped to her side. It was true what the spider said. Every creature in the garden had to eat. That was the law. The spider had only been obeying it, but you could eat the wasps, Florrie said stubbornly. Promise not to eat the bird and I'll set you free. This is one of those things like when she asked the hummingbird, will you fly me around the garden? You have to promise me, but remember the hummingbird, you can't trap that. If the spider is obeying the law of eating in the garden, how could she make that promise? The spider scowled. What if I won't? Promise. Then you starve to death, Florrie said unkindly. She put her hands on her hips. You do that when you're like, that means I'm not going to agree with anything that you say. So the spider scowled. What if I won't? Then you starve to death, Florrie said unkindly. She put her hands on her hips. I can sting you and I can tie you up. So you have to do what I say. The spider shook herself, straining against the ropes around her belly. I'm not promising anything unless you say you're sorry. It was Florrie's turn to scowl. She had never said she was sorry in her life, and she didn't like the idea of saying it. I won't, she said. Besides, I'm cutting you free. You ought to be grateful. I'm not free yet, answered the spider, and I'm not grateful. Florrie stamped her foot. I'm not asking you to starve, she said irritably. All I'm asking is for you not to eat the hummingbird. And after a minute, she added, or me. And all I'm asking is for you to say you're sorry, retorted the spider. You hurt my legs and you hurt my pride, so you have to say sorry. And a glint of malice lit her eyes. You have to say it right. Now, you know what? The first time we ever heard that, how hard it is to say sorry, was all the way back in the beginning of the year with Lotta. Lotta couldn't say she was sorry to her mama when she stomped out of the house. And now Florrie's having a hard time saying she's sorry. But Lotta learned how to do it. And I'm pretty sure Florrie's going to learn how to do it. And she has to mean it. And Florrie actually teaches you what that means. So you hear it a lot. Like, I think that you should say that, but you should mean it. Now Florrie's going to tell you what it means. Okay. Florrie laid her hand on the hilt of her dagger. What do you mean, say it right? I mean, you have to mean it, the spider said. If you don't say you're sorry, I'd rather stay here and starve. I will starve, and it will be all your fault. Florrie made an angry little noise in the back of her throat. I think it sounds like this. This was all taking too long. The spider was her prisoner, and prisoners shouldn't tell their jailers what to do. All the same, Florrie knew she had met her match. The spider was as stubborn as she was. She shut her eyes and tried to imagine being sorry. It was hard work, almost like casting a spell. Florrie's going to tell you how you figure out sorry. So Lotta never really figured it out. Florrie knows. Okay, you ready? Florrie closed her eyes. She imagined that she was a spider, a proud and dangerous spider. She imagined what it was like to spin an elegant web only to be caught in it herself. She imagined having 8 legs and having them twisted and trapped and hurt. And after a moment, she bit her lip. So it's like this. She didn't like biting it. She's like, okay. I'm sorry, she said in a low voice. Florrie's telling you, you have to think about how what you did affected the other person. So to be truly sorry, you need to imagine yourself as the other person. Oh, that's what it is. There's the secret. She has to imagine that she is a spider and how it felt when all that Florrie did happened to that spider. So she had to think about it. So good, Florrie. Okay. I'm sorry. That'll do, said the spider. Cut me free. Now, Florrie stuck her dagger back in her sash. You haven't promised not to eat the hummingbird. I promise, answered the spider. She gave a low chuckle. Truth is, I don't like raw bird very much, but I hate the way birds leave a big hole in my web. I ought to give her, she jerked one leg to point at the hummingbird, a pinch and a poison, just for making such a mess. But when all is said and done, I hate wasps more than birds. There's things I could tell you about wasps that would make your blood run cold. I really feel like we kind of know a lot about wasps. I'm wondering if the spider knows even more. Whew, I want to know her stories about wasps. Woo! Florrie thought that her blood had run cold enough for one evening. She said, I'll try to free the bird without cutting your web too much. Humph, the spider tapped the web with only one foot, with one oily foot. That's good for you, but if I were you, I wouldn't cut her loose just yet. Wait until dawn. Night comes first, and then dawn. Bats. Why? Look at her. The spider shook herself. Freed at last. She's still in a torpor. If you cut her loose, she'll fall. She's safer in the web than on the ground. But I have to cut her loose. She has to go home. Florrie raised her eyes to the unmoving bird. How do I wake her up? You can't, said the spider. That's the thing about torpor. She won't come out of it till the sun rises and she warms up. But she has to fly now, Florrie said. She has to go back to her nest. I have to go home. She's not going anywhere tonight, said the spider. Florrie's heart sank. Night had almost fallen. The green plants looked gray, and the stars were brightening. At any moment, the bats would leave their hollow in the oak tree. It was time to take shelter in her safe little home, but if she left, the hummingbird would be food for any animal that found her. Florrie said slowly, I can't stay here and guard her. Nobody asked you to, said the spider. What I say is every creature has to take care of herself. Florrie agreed. She had taken care of herself ever since she was 3 days old. She thought of her lily leaf hammock and how tired and scratched and sore she felt. Then she remembered the baby hummingbirds. She had kissed them and promised them that their mother would come back. Oh, all right, she said furiously, I'll stay. Now here, when Florrie is furiously saying something, it's because she's angry and frustrated and scared. So it's all three. That equals furiously. I'll stay. Suit yourself, said the spider. I'm going to eat the wasp. Do you want a piece? Oh, no, I don't, Florrie said firmly. I don't like wasps, not even to eat. The spider began to pick her way up the web. She turned back. If you're going to spend the night in the web, you should know that the cross threads are the sticky ones. That's something I want to keep in my pocket all the time when I see a web. The cross ones are the sticky ones. This one's not. Thank you, said Florrie. She meant it. The spider shinnied away. Florrie was left alone. She climbed up the juniper bush and settled down close to the hummingbird. A dog barked in the distance. Florrie had an odd sense that something was missing, and then she knew what it was. The birds had stopped singing. They were roosting for the night instead of leaping from branch to branch. Suddenly the night was alive with shrill sounds. It was the moment Florrie had been dreading. She gripped the juniper twig until her fingers ached. She heard leathery wings beating the air and saw the jagged shapes of bats against the sky. But they did not come looking for her. Bats hunt in the air, not close to the ground. Once they had flown away, Florrie began to breathe again. She caught a glimpse of gleaming white between the trees. The moon. The moon was rising. The beautiful moon. Its light did not dazzle her or make her eyes water. She could look at it as long as she liked, because she's a night fairy. A tiny green light appeared above the grass, then another. The lightning bugs were rising one by one. They lit their lamps and floated toward the sky. Florrie gazed at them, rapt. All at once, she realized how homesick she had been for the night. She was not sleepy. She had been up since dawn, but she knew that she would have no trouble staying awake. She was, after all, a night fairy. This was her time. Can I show you the picture? Okay, because you have to look at it closely because you'll see the lightning bugs and you'll see Florrie in her red poppy dress, but then also you'll see the hummingbird. Okay, can you see? Oh, wait, let me hold it steady. Is that? There. Wait, yep, can you see it? The hummingbird at the bottom? She's caught in that web, and all those lightning bugs off in the distance where Florrie is looking. I almost said lurking. I'm sorry. Looking. That's that chapter, because then chapter 9, the raccoon. There's the, that raccoon's ginormous. It's interesting because you see how the raccoon is illustrated to where the mask and its snout is kind of like a knot color. That's the raccoon, the bandit face mask. That's chapter 9. We have to read that tomorrow.